አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ ጊዜያዊ ጥቅምን አምቢኝ ብለው የዘመመን ሊያቀና እውነትና ዕውቀትን አስከትሎ ኢኮኖሚያዊና መንፈሳዊ መረጃዎችን እንካችሁ ይላል። ትኩስ ዜናዎች፣ ዘጋቢ ፊልሞች፣ ጥልቅ ትንታኔዎች በአደባባይ ሚዲያ ይቀርባሉ። ራእያችን ጊዜውን ያማከለና ዘመኑን የዋጀ በእውነት የነጠሩ መረጃዎችን በእውቀት ደግፎ ለሀገራችን ብሎም ለዓለም ሕዝብ ማዳረስ ነው። አድሬሳችን አደባባይ ኢንፎ ሚዲያ @gmail.com፣ በዌብሳይታችን www.adebabai.com። ያግኙን፣ ይርዱን። የሁላችንም ስለሆነች ኢትዮጵያ በአደባባይ እንዘግባለን። አደባባይ ሚዲያ።
አደባባይ ሚዲያ የኔ ነው። አደባባይ ሚዲያ የኔም ነው። አደባባይ ሚዲያ የኔ ነው። አደባባይ ሚዲያ የሁላችንም ነው። የኛ ቤተሰብ አደባባይ ሚዲያን ይመለከታል። የእናንተስ? Do your parents watch አደባባይ ሚዲያ? Watch, follow, subscribe and help አደባባይ። አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ።
Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us from around the world as we start our special Sunday program of Viewers Digest Adebabay Media. Thank you for being with us at this moment. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, especially share this program. We have a very special guest for you today that I am honored to be with today. Before I tell you who she is, I'm going to remind you again, this is the Viewers Digest program. Please share, like, and subscribe this program for us. If you've already subscribed, please do share it with all the networks that you have. It's very important that you are part of the program, are part of this conversation with us. Don't forget, you could always use the comments at the bottom, and we want you to be part of this program together. We're going to go to a very short advertisement again until you do that, to help us gather as many audience as we can so we could be part of this conversation together. Again, thank you for being with us.
አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ ጊዜያዊ ጥቅምን አምቢኝ ብለው የዘመመን ሊያቀና እውነትና ዕውቀትን አስከትሎ ኢኮኖሚያዊና መንፈሳዊ መረጃዎችን እንካችሁ ይላል። ትኩስ ዜናዎች፣ ዘጋቢ ፊልሞች፣ ጥልቅ ትንታኔዎች በአደባባይ ሚዲያ ይቀርባሉ። ራእያችን ጊዜውን ያማከለና ዘመኑን የዋጀ በእውነት የነጠሩ መረጃዎችን በእውቀት ደግፎ ለሀገራችን ብሎም ለዓለም ሕዝብ ማዳረስ ነው። አድሬሳችን አደባባይ ኢንፎ ሚዲያ @gmail.com፣ በዌብሳይታችን www.adebabai.com። ያግኙን፣ ይርዱን። የሁላችንም ስለሆነች ኢትዮጵያ በአደባባይ እንዘግባለን። አደባባይ ሚዲያ።
Welcome back again. Migrating at age 7 from Addis Ababa to Minnesota, Lilina Desta has not only been involved in being successful in her own life, but from services in the Ethiopian community to serving, from services she's given the Ethiopian community to serving the Mother Church, from being involved in everyday youth mentorship to being the voice of many forgotten youth. She has dedicated her entire life in giving back to the community that we all adore and that raised her. For this year, along with her beloved family, she starts this decade with a new project, ANG Foundation, intended for community service, which we will be talking about today. It is my honor to have my friend that I grew up with as my guest today. Lilina, welcome.
A privilege to be here with you, Deacon Ephraim. Thank you.
It is. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. We're going to start with, by the way, this is, a lot of times I'm not really known to be nervous, but for some reason, having a conversation with Lilina is always a little intriguing and a little, because I grew up with you, and I'm kind of want to call you Lil as I do, and I think you're the only one in Minnesota that I could make fun of in terms of height, right?
True
So
story.
we'll try not to go too much into that because we're still need to do this great conversation with you. Again, it's really an honor to be with you, Lilina, to share your story that we know of you in Minnesota to all of Adebabay Media's family today. Tell us first a little bit about growing up here in the United States. Tell us who Lilina Desta is, starting from the time you've come to Minnesota and at age 7, I believe, and throughout your service and school and life. Who is Lilina Desta?
That's a big question. Well, I came here when I was 7 years old. So much of my life I spent in the United States, in Minnesota, in cold Minnesota. Like Deacon Ephraim said, we spent much of our childhood together. We grew up at Dabra Salam Medanalam. And, you know, it's been over 20 years here. I didn't think that Minnesota, as cold as it is, this is a place that we would all stay and call home, but it is. It has come that way. So I'm here with both my parents and my 2 brothers, and we have, you know, our family has been here for forever. It feels like sometimes, but during the time that I've been here, I've had the privilege of attending the University of Minnesota, where I got my biomedical engineering degree. And then after that, I worked for a little bit as a quality engineer and moved into a new area in business. So I got a master's in business administration and then moved into the corporate business world. So currently I work in corporate marketing and I run my own business and decided, hey, there's one more degree calling my name. So went back to school this past fall. So I'm 1 semester into my doctoral in business administration program at St. Mary's University. So it's been a long journey of learning and a long journey of serving the community and something that I love to do. So it's been a privilege to do the work that I do. And I wouldn't have it any other way than to be here today to talk about this work and to extend what it is that I can do to this community for as long as that I am here.
Perfect. Thank you, Lilina. And there are many young people, as we know, that migrated from different parts of the world, that grew up here, that are successful, assimilated, became successful in their own field, assimilated. But rarely do we see people like you that comes back to the community, or not only come back, but be part of the community of their origin. And not only be involved, but give back and be interested in that, you know, Ethiopiawiness or that background that you have, while still shining as a successful American in the United States. Rarely do we see that. So what made you interested in this Ethiopiawiness, that, you know, still having this very successful life that you just explained in a short way? What made you interested in still sticking with your roots and being able to give back so much to your community, which we will talk more about as we go?
It's identity for me. I think, you know, you grow up in the United States and you're pulled in multiple directions. So when you're in school, you're an immigrant. You know, when I came into school, I didn't know English and I was bullied for not knowing English. And then finally you understand English, but you're never really fluent, right? So even in my presentations in these days, you sneak in a she, kaza, or something like that in the middle, and you're still an immigrant. It doesn't change anything. So finding a place to fit in, finding a place to feel like you're wanted and you're needed. I think that's what it was for me. So I grew up around a lot of the Ethiopiawiness in my house, you know, and starting from the food, starting from the respect, starting from the traditions that we have inside of our household, the holidays that we celebrate. I give that to my parents because they instilled it in us, you know. And then going into serving the community, I see my parents do it all the time. I see my brothers do it all the time. You don't get to be the odd child when everything is like around you is, you know, all positive and you're giving back. It gives you an opportunity to say, hey, this is an extension of who I am. So for me, it was seeking that identity and knowing who I am, knowing really what my purpose on this earth is. And from that, that's kind of how it started. And I picked up the traditions. I learned majority of my Amarinya here in the United States. I speak like adult Amarinya. I never had slang in my language until I met Abisha college students that I grew up with during my undergraduate career, and then I picked up slang, and then I thought my Amarinya is spot on. But still, to this day, I am still learning, and I'm still learning the areas of English where I need to develop, the areas of Amarinya that I need to develop, and it's a lifelong journey. So I accept it as that. It's a lifelong journey. It's a lifelong journey of learning and finding myself and who I am in what I do. I hope I answered your question.
You did. And speaking, before I get to the other question, when you were mentioning that you learn most of your language, most of the Amharic here, if you remember growing up, a lot of times I would say, if we're like sometimes late at church on Sundays, maybe practicing a play, I would say, "Ara zare abbate kottanyal," and you would always say, for you it's እናቴ ትቆጣኛለች. So I, I know that a lot of, like, of course you have really amazing parents, and we all do, but it's from what I know, it's your mom that have really been the teacher, the role model in your life that had brought the Lilina that we know here today. As you tell us about how you learn your language, and a little bit about your that part of I've also seen your interview with Zamana. You mentioned of how it was really funny when you mentioned, because we all lived here. We lived here, but we basically lived in a traditional Ethiopian way in our households. So tell us a little bit about that, like starting from how you learn your language. From what I know, it's your mom, but tell us about that.
That's a good question. It's always a funny question. So we learned Amarinya through the Amarinya books that would get sent over from Ethiopia to us. And it was every year we would get new batches of books. So it was Andenya Kfil, Huletenya Kfil, Sostenya Kfil. And it was like never ending. It just kept going. And that was what it was for us. It was never ending. So every year that, family members go back home, we would get an extension of, like an Amarinya book, a workbook. And then on top of that, you get reading books, and then you get assignments. So my mom was always, she's like a teacher. I don't know. In a past life, she must have been a teacher, because she has red pen and she's ready to correct the assignments as soon as she gets home from work. I wish I had half the energy that she did with us today in my young adulthood, right? So she was just perfect and super consistent about what her goal was. And what her goal was to teach us language is part of your identity. So when you go get the opportunity to go back home, being able to communicate with everybody and having that privilege, I didn't take it lightly then when I was younger, but definitely hit home when I first got my chance to visit Ethiopia a few years back. And it was really a reality check. Like, wow, all of those things that she did, it was intentional. It was for this moment, is to prepare us for this moment, to be in our motherland and to feel connected, to talk to family members, and just be a part of that community. And I don't think we could have done that if we were only speaking English. That wouldn't have worked. But I know there's general assumptions, when we went to Ethiopia, a lot of our neighbors, family members, they haven't seen us since we were 6, 7, So for them, it was just a shock to see it. And they approached us with their hellos, how are yous, things of that nature. And we were able to communicate with them. And that was a first for them. They were really expecting the other way around. And you don't get to connect with people, and language gets this gracious opportunity to do that through language. It's kind of a privilege, So that's kind of what brought us to this Amarinya now is part of who we are. And it's embedded in our church. It's embedded in, the faith. It's embedded in the culture. And you don't get to get away from it. So I'm glad we didn't when we were younger.
It is true. Thank you, Lillian, and I agree. Speaking of this phenomenon of living the Ethiopiawinit, we also have to agree that it's not always easy. to other people. So my next question would be, have you ever found these two worlds collide against one another, and that it had become so challenging for you, like in terms of culture, the church tradition? Like, there's a lot of things that are completely opposite to one another. Sometimes we find good culture, good tradition in the United States that we don't see back home. And of course, we see a lot of good, great traditions that we've met in ourselves and in our lives that we've taken, that has been part of our life here in the United States. But has there ever been a collision? Because a lot of the youth would say, like, that won't be the only problem, but most of those that would assimilate and completely stray away from their culture and from their upbringing, one of the things they would excuse, or one of the things they claim to be, is it's a different world, right? It's a total different world. Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, I mean, colliding worlds all the time, right? It's when you're in school, I'll give you an example for myself. When I was in 5th grade, my parents got called down to school, and during conferences, my parents were told I was a quiet child, and you'd never think that that's a problem, but I was a quiet child. I got my work done. I was a good student, but I was a quiet child, and they were just wondering, why is she so quiet, right? And typically, in the Ethiopian school, quiet is good, right? You see your teacher, you look down. You don't look into the eyes of your teacher, and even that was kind of points against me, that I didn't look them in the eyes. I picked up certain things. You pick up those things early on in your childhood, and I picked those things up, and it was what it was. But still, like, that's colliding at a young age, right? And that's what it looked like for me. And you overcome. I think that's what has worked for me, is to know, okay, well, I'm here, I'm in this zone, and it's still something that's taken against you. So when I'm at work, and my tendency is, I'm gonna let my boss take the first seat or sit at the head of the table, or you pick up these things that you normally do in an Ethiopian kind of meeting, right? Or when elderly people are by you, it doesn't matter if it's a work thing, a nonprofit thing, you just have a tendency to take the back seat as the younger person in the room. And those things they have to go. Like, you don't have those. That's considered weaknesses in this country, right? Like, you're supposed to sit at the table, speak up, talk, engage, give us your opinion. And for me, it's a colliding world, a left and right kind of deal for me. And I see it all the time. But I think the thing for me is to really recognize when that happens, right? When you realize, when is this colliding? Is this my two worlds colliding? Okay, let me be observant of my worlds colliding, and let me do something about it. Let me understand, or let me explain. There's times where I've told people that I've worked with, we don't eat this kind of food during fasting season. So don't be offended. I'm so glad you brought donuts, but I can't have any. It might be my birthday, but I can't have any. But please, on my behalf, eat, right? So it gives you those kinds of things that you just have to know, okay, great. This is when the world is colliding for me. What do I do about it? And what are those things that stay straight true to myself, right? And be able to explain and get people to the next level of understanding who I am. And it's a conscious decision that you make versus a passive thing that you kind of deal with after it happens. But it comes with age. I wasn't always like that as a kid. So, yeah. But I would say it collides all the time.
Definitely. And I like what you said about, like, when you, for example, your teachers being quiet, they admire that. One thing a lot of times we forget as Ethiopians, I think, living here, is one great culture of American culture that I love is, of course, it's not always easy. It's not like the majority might not always understand right away, but there's this culture, American culture, where when you introduce something new, you have that, they accept it, and it eventually becomes an American culture, right? If we look at any, especially African American culture, if most of them, whether we are part of the culture or not, it is embedded, or it comes from, you know, the African root. It has a root where it started. It's the same thing with the Latinos, with other cultures as well. And as Ethiopians, I tend to tell the youth this as well. We have an obligation. Like it might not be in 50 years or 100 years, but there will be a lot of Ethiopiawi cultures that will be part of American culture that we could introduce, that they will love. So it's a good way that you've put it. Let's talk about your other side, your other great talent that we all know of, that I know of, and I want to introduce to Adebabay Media. By the way, Adebabay Media family, thank you for joining us in this beautiful conversation. Don't forget to share, comment, like, and share our conversation with other people. And thank you for being with us. Now you're really great Senetzuf writer or literature. I've seen you do speeches. I mean, if it's church, if it's a church event, there's Lilina with a great speech or a poem. If it's a spoken word event, there's Lilina there representing Ethiopia and Africa and all, even African Americans I've seen. When I'm talking about in general. In school, you're involved in that. Tell us a little bit of how did that interest come? Is that again from your very strong mother that I know, or where did you develop that that literacy Senetzuf life?
It comes from both my parents, but the first time that I ever wrote, I was maybe 7.5, 8, and I presented at an Ethiopian New Year's event, and I was a small child, and they put me on top of a table, and I presented a written piece written by myself and my dad, and I loved it as a kid. I don't even remember the story, but it has a really good moral at the end, and it was a great story to share. I picked up writing from that, but I love writing. I love reading people's writing. And then I started getting into spiritual poetry writing and spoken word. I lean towards spoken word more. And, you know, in being able to like digest the information within the Bible and being able to push it back out in a creative sense where it allows people to engage. It was such a privilege. So I started doing that, and I keep getting pushed to do more, which is good, because for me, I'm learning a lot. I'm learning a lot from sermons and reading the Bible in of itself, and then bringing that language back into poetry or into spoken word that can be presented, especially to young people. So I'm pushing myself out of my normal comfort zone. But yes, that's kind of how I got into it. And both my parents are very good writers. So.
Okay. You know what I really like? One thing I'm liking today is I'm the one controlling Lilina today and ordering her to do something. So I get to do that live today. Do you have any piece that you want to share with us, please? It could be 5 minutes or any poem that. Even if you could, do you have the one that you said you wrote about your dad?
No, I wish I had that. No, that was so long ago.
Okay.
But I did bring you one. I brought you a different one just so that people can have a taste of something different. This one is a spoken word. It's called Rise. It's actually inspired by Maya Angelou's Still I Rise. Takes the same tone, a little bit of the same beat, but has a different message. So it's called Rise. You may write me off in history as the girl with questionable origin, unusual, kinky hair with patterns of its own, but still, like the smoke of a fire, I rise. Does my bluntness upset you? Does my honesty make you feel blue? 'Cause I walk as if I have the earth right beneath my shoes. Does my dedication faze you? Does it make you question what's in it for me and not you? 'Cause my passions have many plans, as if I have the sun in the palm of my hands. Does my boldness upset you? Don't walk away without a clue. That bold has gotten me through the many no's that made me blue. You may need to tell me no. I may not fit in a column or a row, but I will rise and continue to grow. When we stay positive, we rise. When we are selfless, we rise. When we work together, we rise. When we are human, we rise. When we are hopeful, we rise. When we lift each other, we rise. We rise, we rise, we rise.
We rise, we rise, we rise. Thank you so much. That's very powerful. At least I know this in spoken word. Is this an American culture, by the way? You go.
Right? I don't know if it's American. I know it's a spoken word culture.
Right? Yeah. So yes. that was very powerful. Thank you, Lilina. Before we go to break, do you have you ever thought of collecting these poems, writings, literatures? By the way, it's not only this is, brothers and sisters, what you've just seen is only one part of spoken word that you've seen her. She does Amharic spiritual poems, literature, even writes plays. There's nothing that this sister doesn't do. I have to admit that, I guess, live. And in the future, God willing, we'll share these things as we go along. Have you ever thought of collecting these, making it a book?
You know, I'm thinking about it more and more. At least now, before they used to just be on sheets of paper everywhere. But now I actually have them, and I'm starting to collect them into poetry books, giving them themes. You know, if they're spiritual poetry books. And I'm starting to bring them together. That has never happened before. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll see.
And we will first have it on Adebabay, right?
Yes. That happens, right. Yes.
Thank you, brothers and sisters. We'll be right back after this advertisement. Please don't forget to share and like and comment our conversation so you could be, so other people can be part of it. Stay tuned. We'll be back. All right, brothers and sisters, we are back. We're having a great conversation with our sister Lilina Desta. We're gonna move forward and talk a little bit about Lilina Desta's community service part of her life. Usually when we think of community service, we think of it as being part of a community board member or being given a task to finish. But knowing you, Lilina, you've always found a way to serve back the community. You grew up loving in any way you can. You never wait for the bureaucracy or structure or for people to tell you to do this and that. You always find a way to build upon community work, and it could, again, when we say community, not only the Ethiopian community but church, anywhere that there is Ethiopians, you have a way to be involved in the church services, again, in all the communities. So what drives you to be part of these community services?
I enjoy service. I enjoy being able to serve others and have that privilege. I also think if I went through something difficult, I don't think anybody else should have to repeat it. There should be a means for me to help them. Even if I don't solve the problem, at least my experience could be 1 or 2 steps ahead of where I was when I was faced with that same problem. And I think that should be common, but it's actually not. And I wish it was, because I think what drives me to that that service in my mind is why not help each other rather than why help each other? Like, why not? That should be, it's a privilege. It's God's work. It's this responsibility that I have while I'm here on earth, right? And that's my job. So yes, it takes a lot of time, and yes, it takes a lot of effort, but I enjoy it. And I love seeing the fruit of that work, because it's life-changing. For some people, it can be life-changing. So why not be that mentor? Why not be that tutor? Why not be that teacher for that person that needs it? Why not share the resource, the job that you're seeing at your current company? All of those things are so important, yet we've deemed it like it's the world against me kind of mentality, where other people's suffering has become okay, or other people's problems are not my problems. That kind of mentality has become okay. And that's not the way I live. So in a way that I think about my life, I think about service as being an essential part of who I am. It's what I do.
That's beautiful. Personally, what do you think you've gained out of it's going to take me to the other question that that's going to be part of our conversation. What do you think you personally gained out of giving back to the community?
Listening. I think I've learned how to listen better. I've learned how to be humble and know people and just listen to them. It's not that complicated, we have 2 ears. That's what it's for. And I talk less. So I try to understand people's problems, young people's problems, and walk in their shoes with them in hopes of understanding them a little bit better. I think we don't listen to each other enough. We don't listen to each other's stories enough. So we think that we're existing, but we could be existing so much better if we listen to each other, and if we learned how to lift each other up. And for me, it's so much leadership, so much patience, so much responsibility, especially when you're working with young people, being able to say the right things all the time. We've all had our fair share of our own mistakes being young, right? And seeing young people go through those same things is very difficult. It's hard. But walking with them and telling them, I'm here for you. Like, it's going to be okay. I'm here for you. That's important. And it's something that gives you life. Whereas it seems like everything else kind of sucks away at your life in this world. When you are able to lift somebody in that particular way, it is really life-changing. It's something that changes your own world. It humbles you in a way that nothing else can. So I wish that more people did this work. It's a lot of work, especially when you're working with young people. It's a lot of work, but it's work that needs to be done. I believe it's work that needs to be done.
Thank you for saying what you said, especially at the last sentence, which is why I asked this question, is why, like, I want you to answer it. Why is it important that a lot of people like you do this job in the future, or this community service? Because as you know, unfortunately, and this is not only a Minnesota thing, we all know it's everywhere, not even America, abroad, where any kind of community organization in terms of Ethiopian organizations tends to be choked by political differences, or just any kind of nonsense bickering or nonsense division happens, and it loses the sense of service. Community service is nothing but just serving others. And you put it beautifully. One thing you learn is actually listening to other people's agony, right? One thing you learn spiritually, like even in spiritual services, is the same thing. Being able to have empathy towards others' pain, and being able to spiritually heal them. That's the same thing with community service. You've said it well. So you've answered it, but why again is it important for people like you to come out and do these such community services? Because I've had this conversation with Mesfin on the other like about 3 weeks ago here on Adebabay, where we've talked about the lack of a lot of basic information that we could have provided for our brothers and sisters that are immigrants coming here, but because of these lack of community organizations, even the greatest people that could have become successful easily here in the United States, because of lack of information, we lose them. So
Mhm.
that's one thing. So why is this thing very important and crucial, especially at this moment where the, more than ever the world and Ethiopia, our mother እናት ሀገራችን needs us more than ever to come together and do that. So why is that important?
It's purpose. For me, it comes down to purpose. What is our purpose on this planet? We're here. We're here for an unknown amount of time. I could be gone tomorrow. Maybe this is the last good thing that I do on this world, and that's okay. I'm doing it, right? So I believe it starts with each person and who you are. So Deacon Ephraim, it could be you, right? It starts with you. It could be anybody. It could be me. It could be my mom. It doesn't have to be anybody that's super high up there or has a lot of money or anything of that nature. Doing good and feeding, the soul of others, pretty much. It doesn't take $1,000,000. Actually, if each of us did our part, we would be in a much better state, right? We cannot be here saying, I'm in it for me. That's not the purpose. So I think for people, it all starts with, what is your purpose? What is your purpose in this world today? It does not start tomorrow, today. So for me, when I wake up every morning, I ask myself, today, I know these things need to get done for Lilina. What else is being done for everybody else? And I reflect back on it. At the end of the day, I say, what have I done? And have I done well? And come back to that in those points of reflection. But for me, going on every day and just existing, that cannot be that's not why God put me here. I cannot think that that's my limitation. Whatever privilege or whatever talent that I have been given, I should be able to use that talent to serve others. I gave you the example of the poetry. Poetry for me for a long time was written in books and never shared. I actually prefer not to share. And others have pushed me and nudged me, They want me to write poems about certain topics I have no idea about, right? Pushing me to learn. Even in the spiritual realm, I'm learning so much. So I believe that God has interesting ways of teaching us the things that we need to teach learn in our own lives. And I'm privileged to be that, that voice or that method in which somebody learns something. But I genuinely think it goes back to purpose. What is your purpose? Today, you're here. You are existing. God has given you another day. What is your purpose? What are you going to do with that time that you have been given? I think when we start to answer those questions, they're hard questions. When we start to answer those questions, we get to a much further place in life. I hope I answered your question.
You've answered it very well, more powerful, and I don't want to even repeat what you've said. You said it very well and with more great articulation, powerfully.
Thank you.
Now let's move towards what we've talked about mostly about your community service growing up, and like I said, knowing you personally, you've never really waited for like a structure or someone to give you guidance on doing something. You always find the proper way, and like you said, it starts with you've told me it starts with me, right? You've always had that mentality that you always do what you can for whatever issue you see in front. I believe now, since we're moving towards your the new business that you're starting with your family, I've seen you from the past 2 years. You correct me if I'm wrong. You've had your personal consultant LLC business, which you ran for about 2 years. That specifically works with students and just advising. I'll let you answer specifically on the things that you do, but you collaborated all of that effort you did your whole entire life and put it into an organization. And then now eventually in 2020, where a lot of people are complaining about a lot of businesses being lost, a lot of jobs being lost, and everybody quarantining their lives at home, you've created this foundation, A&G Foundation, intended for community service. Let's tell us both the process, and start with what does A&G start mean first, and then explain to us what those businesses and consultants do.
Sure. So in my professional life, I'm a market research consultant, and I enjoy my job, but I do work in corporate, and we deal with big companies, right? It's a big experience for me, and I'm privileged to have it. I also have a small, like a sweet spot, I guess, for small businesses, and because they really are the mom and dad or husband wife, you know, type of businesses, whether they're auto mechanic shops or restaurants or your corner store. And I just enjoy, you know, the small business experience. I think it goes a long way, and it's very underappreciated. So a couple of years ago, I started A&G Consulting, and A&G Consulting started with thinking about how should I name my business, and where do I come from, and how do I want it to be represented. And I thought of what better way than to include a legacy. This is a legacy. So for us, it's the first business in the family. So it's a legacy. So it started with naming it after my mother and my father. So it's actually A is for Almaz and G is for Gitawan. So I started it that way, and I started working with small businesses, and I loved that work. It's just a privilege, and I get a chance to do it on the weekends or evenings, and it's just great work, and I enjoy doing that, and I enjoy bringing my business skills and my project management skills to the table for small businesses that need it, especially at a time like this when everything is, you know, kind of up in the air for small businesses. That being said, that's kind of like the last 2 years, and it's still going. So I do this work with small businesses. Just it's a huge development opportunity for me as well. And then in April, you know, pretty much at the beginning of the year, I kind of sat with my family and I said, you know, we do all of this great work in the community, and we've done it for a long time. I've tutored and mentored for over 10 years, and we've never given it a name. We've never given it the opportunity to actually excel and get this information out there to young people and parents that need it the most. And it just seemed fitting that this be the year, given that this is the amount of challenges that we are facing in education with young people. It's very, very tough. It's a very tough year. And we're looking into transitioning into an even tougher year, I would say, because whether students go back to their schools or not in January, we have been set back quite a bit. We're just looking at a much lower percentage of low-income students attending their online classes. And it's not the same. The gap, the achievement gap just pretty much expanded, and nobody's talking about it. By the time we go back in September, life will have forever changed for students. It's not, we're talking about like 10, 11, 12 months of education that has kind of just shrunk back, you know, and we have to start talking about it, especially as immigrants and Black people in America. Education is tough. It's tough for kids, but if we think that online education is not hurting us or is not impacting the achievement gap, that's a joke. It is. It very much is, and the gap is just getting wider. So that's kind of where the dream started for me. Is, you know, let's make it formal. Let's do what we love, and let's do it with a formal name. And so I drafted all of the family members, including my parents, into the foundation. We all were sitting in the board, and we're enjoying the conversations that we're having, just talking about how can we help other people succeed and achieve? How can we do that? What can this family offer, right? In terms of our knowledge, ranging from, you know, my background is biomedical engineering, so is my little brother's. We have industrial engineering. My little brother's in industrial engineering, and my older brother's in electrical engineering and business. And both my parents have business backgrounds and parenting backgrounds. It's a scope, right? It's a scope of the experiences that we have, makes us an interesting blend, you know. And my sister-in-law is in public health. We have two kiddos in our family too, and it's just an extension. We are an extension. So I think it's a privilege to get a chance to do this work, and we've done an amazing job. I mean, we've in the last 6 months put in over 100 hours of work. My nieces have been involved. We made cards for the elderly. I don't take anybody as too young to do something. And we made little cards, Naomi and Lydia. We sat and made cards for the elderly that are socially distanced from their parents and their families and whoever else that they would normally have visiting them, right? So these are for people that are going to go into that are in senior homes and have been away from people for quite some time. So I don't believe in you're too young to do anything or you're too old to do anything. There's no such thing. And I think this is a reflection of that. Is this whole entire foundation is built on the concept that everybody can do something, and they should. And we want to start changing the language around how can we serve the community intentionally, not just by mistake, but intentionally as a family, or just anyone can do this work. So we're privileged, and I consider this a very, 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 very privileged, just to be able to extend and do this work with my family. It's just brought us closer together too.
Yeah, beautifully. And speaking of, you mentioned, I'm going to ask you two questions together. Speaking of your degree you did in biomedical engineering, and most of your family members, I know Dr. Elias and your brother as well, Abraham, and you've all been in the engineering department. But I remember when you around the time that you were taking biomedical engineering, if I'm not mistaken, you'll correct me. It was a new phenomena. It was a new field where the medical school and the engineering world together. That's basically what the biomedical engineering, and it's actually one of the questions that are coming in the comments. If you could talk a little bit about your biomedical engineering degree, and if that influenced what you're doing right now, and also with the community services and church life that you've spoken about, if you could tie that in, and for example, for someone that doesn't know about biomedical engineering, and you said there's no such thing as age in wanting to do something, if they want to go into that field, to explain to them what that field is all about. And follow up, I'm sorry. Again, yeah. Today I get to control, right, everything, and Lillian only listens.
Yes, go for it.
I'm kidding. In about 10 years, right? We're starting a new decade, right? And this is you starting this foundation is not only great for the Ethiopian community, but it's also a new decade, and it's also, like you said, the most unprecedented time with COVID, where a lot of people are losing their business instead of just let alone think about opening a new one, but you're doing it. So where do you see this new company, or this new consultant, this new foundation in about 10 years, in the next decade? Sorry, but let's start with biomedical engineering. You there? I think we lost.
አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ ጊዜያዊ ጥቅምን አምቢኝ ብሎ የዘመመን ሊያቀና እውነትና እውቀትን አስከትሎ ኢኮኖሚያዊና መንፈሳዊ መረጃዎችን እንካችሁ ይላል። ትኩስ ዜናዎች፣ ዘጋቢ ፊልሞች፣ ጥልቅ ትንታኔዎች በአደባባይ ሚዲያ ይቀርባሉ። ራእያችን ጊዜውን ያማከለና ዘመኑን የዋጀ በእውነት የነጠሩ መረጃዎችን በእውቀት ደግፎ ለሀገራችን ብሎም ለዓለም ሕዝብ ማዳረስ ነው። አድሬሳችን አደባባይ ኢንፎ ሚዲያ @gmail.com፣ በዌብሳይታችን www.adebabai.com። ያግኙን፣ ይርዱን። የሁላችንም ስለሆነች ኢትዮጵያ በአደባባይ እንዘግባለን። አደባባይ ሚዲያ።
አደባባይ ሚዲያ የኔ ነው። አደባባይ ሚዲያ የኔም ነው። አደባባይ ሚዲያ የኔ ነው። አደባባይ ሚዲያ የሁላችንም ነው። የኛ ቤተሰብ አደባባይ ሚዲያን ይመለከታል። የእናንተስ? Do your parents watch አደባባይ ሚዲያ? Watch, follow, subscribe and help አደባባይ። አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ።
Welcome back, brothers and sisters, Adebabay Media family, and here in Viewers Digest Sunday English program. I think we lost Lina for a little bit, but I think she's back. Are you back, sister? All right, we'll just wait for her. I think she's back. All right.
You can
So
hear
a
me
little
okay,
bit about
right?
biomedical engineering, and moving forward within 10 years, where do you see this new foundation? All right.
አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ
A little
ጊዜያዊ
bit
ጥቅምን
about bio.
እምቢኝ ብሎ የዘመመን ሊያቀና እውነትና እውቀትን አስከትሎ ኢኮኖሚያዊና መንፈሳዊ መረጃዎችን እንካችሁ ይላል። ትኩስ ዜናዎች፣ ዘጋቢ ፊልሞች፣ ጥልቅ ትንታኔዎች በአደባባይ ሚዲያ ይቀርባሉ። ራእያችን ጊዜውን ያማከለና ዘመኑን የዋጀ በእውነት የነጠሩ መረጃዎችን በእውቀት ደግፎ ለሀገራችን ብሎ ለዓለም ሕዝብ ማዳረስ ነው። አድሬሳችን አደባባይ ኢንፎ ሚዲያ @gmail.com፣ በዌብሳይታችን www.adebabai.com። ያግኙን፣ ይርዱን። የሁላችንም ስለሆነች ኢትዮጵያ በአደባባይ እንዘግባለን። አደባባይ ሚዲያ።
We are back, brothers and sisters. We had a little technical difficulty, and we'll have Lena back as soon as we can. Brothers and sisters, again, the reason here in Viewers Digest, if you've noticed, every Sunday in Viewers Digest program, one of the conversations that we are having, even though it's with various different guests and honorable guests, one of the important things that we always raise is the importance of growing our community, and the importance and realizing how much work we have in terms of community work for our especially for the Ethiopian community. So this is why these kind of conversations are very important. It's great that you are with us and with commenting and sharing and liking and being part of this conversation with us. Please do keep doing that. I hope I have Lena back now.
I hope so.
There you go. Okay, now we're good, I think. So let's go on with the question on if you could elaborate a little bit about the biomedical engineering field, and how that ties with a lot of your. I feel like most of that field, or most of that career, is what you're embedding into your services that you give in your community, and now in your business. And second, where do you see it grow within the next decade, since this is a new decade?
Yes. So biomedical engineering, I thought it was very fascinating. I was actually pre-med before I switched over to business. So I intended on going to medical school. That was actually part of the plan, and that's why I got pulled into biomedical engineering. What I loved about it is it's a combination of biology and engineering. I was a good math student, and that's kind of what pulled me towards the engineering side of things. But I loved the degree. I loved the program I was in. It was an intense program, and it's new, it was new, at least in the time that I was there. So there's some things that you couldn't even get in textbooks because they weren't made yet. And it was fairly new industry, new program. So that was part of the biomedical engineering, was that was the reason why I got in. And that's how I kind of survived. It was survival. It was very, very intense program, but I loved it, and I'm glad. I want to push people into the STEM fields of science, technology, engineering, math, all of those. I think they're incredible. They're incredible for women and Black people as well. And we don't have enough people in those areas. And I think STEM makes me very passionate, and I think we should all I don't think robotics is a male thing. I don't believe in that kind of stuff. So if you have the passion to pursue those things, it's a matter of finding the right mentors in order to do that. And I found my mentors, and that's where I kind of got guided into biomedical engineering. Bringing me to your second question, 10 years down the road, my brother said he wants to have helped 1,000 plus people at the end of 10 years. That's his actual goal. And that's where we thrive, so he said it, so we're going to make it happen, so that's the goal, is to extend past ourselves and be able to share our knowledge with the rest of the world, in hopes that people are able to reach their own definition of success and achievement, whatever that may be. So that's kind of our goal and our intention, with starting this foundation, is how can we get people to reach their full potential?
That's beautifully said, Lilena. Thank you so much for everything that you've said and shared. There's nothing that I want to add more. And thank you for keep being inspirational, both to your whole family and yourself, what you're doing. And understand that Adebabay Media will continue being your support, your family in the future, with all your endeavors in the future. Two questions, but combined together. One thing that we always ask our guests at the end, this is Hewitt's question. What does it mean to be Ethiopian to you? ኢትዮጵያዊነት ምንድን ነው ላንቺ?
Wow, that's a big question. It's the center of who I am. It's my identity. It's how I connect with others. It's something that I'm very proud of. So that's how I consider Ethiopianness in my head, is being able to serve, wagan la wagan. Like I live that. I think that's what it means to me. It's a good question.
Basically that what you've been doing your whole entire life. That's beautifully said. Any last word?
I'm privileged to be here. I'm privileged to get to share this message with everyone. And I just want to thank everyone at Adebabay. I know this isn't easy. This is hard work that you guys are doing. So even having this platform to talk about these things that are impacting our community, it's not a platform that we've had before. So I'm privileged to be here. Thank you for thinking of me and bringing me here to speak with you. But I just want to thank all of the Adebabay family for all that you are doing as well.
Thank you so much, Lilena, and thank you for being part of this program as well. Like I said, this is the first of many beginnings, and with all your future work, we will be with you. We will be, if not anything, your voice as you move forward with all your future endeavors. Brothers and sisters, all Adebabay Media and Viewers Digest members, thank you so much for being with us today on yet another indulging and great conversation that we've had with Lilena Desta. Again, we ask you to, we're about to go out of live, but you could still share this conversation with your beloved ones. There's a lot of great information that Lilena had given us today that is personally beneficial to especially the youth and anyone that has the future goals and aspirations like that of Lilena Desta. So we ask you to continue supporting Adebabay Media, continue supporting our mission to get voices like Lilena Desta and many others into your homes, and so we could all someday live into a great, strong Ethiopian community out here in the United States and around the world. Again, thank you. We'll see you next Sunday for another Viewers Digest. Good night.